ocean's gray waves.
Hello everyone, I'm Evie and welcome to the 10th video on the history of Splatoon abilities. Wow, double digits already. Today is one I'm sure many of you are curious about. Today, we'll be going over the abilities that were exclusive to Splatoon 2. If you like this type of content or more surrounding the Splatoon series, you should make sure you're subscribed, as only a small percentage of my viewers are subscribed. Actually, you should just subscribe right now, as I have a playlist of these types of videos. You can also become a channel member to get sneak peeks on upcoming videos and exclusive emotes when going live. Alright, for the final time in 2024, let's get into the first ability. Bomb Defense Up is a stackable ability introduced in Splatoon 2. It reduces the amount of damage taken by certain sub-weapons and special weapons. Since it's a stackable ability, it's favored by Incline and unfavored by Crack-On, being 5 times more or less likely to roll on a piece of gear with the ability respectively. Bomb Defense Up reduces damage against auto bombs, curling bombs, splat bombs, suction bombs, burst bombs, ink mines, ballers, ink jets, tenna missiles, and splashdowns. Despite how much you stack, if an attack kills you in one shot from full health, it will still do so. Bomb Defense Up is an extremely useful ability when used in 1 or 2 subs. As for weapons that need exact number of hits to kill, it messes up those numbers. For example, a close inkjet shot does 50 damage, but using 1 sub of Bomb Defense Up makes it 49.7 damage. And those numbers are the same when you bump into a baller. Another example is a far indirect burst bomb does 25 damage, but 1 sub reduces it to 24.7 damage, turning a 4-shot into a 5-shot. This isn't just limited to attacks comboing with themselves. 70 is a very popular damage number, and all outside explosions of lethal bombs do 30 damage, so running any amount of Bomb Defense Up will make any main weapon plus bomb combo not fatal. Bomb Defense Up is the original utility sub. Gear slots where running 1 or 2 subs would have massive returns. Bomb Defense Up was always run on everything, as all the lethal bombs were common, same for special weapons, along with the bonus of making ink mines and splashdowns weaker. The only thing is that Bomb Defense Up wasn't stacked past 2 subs, as the returns fell off hard, and there were very few new benchmarks past that. Though, I think the funniest benchmark is with ink mines, where if you run 3 mains and 9 subs, you can survive 11 far indirect ink mines, while running 1 less sub would kill you in 10. Clearly, that would never happen to anyone, but it's funny enough that I want to point out. But that is the history of Bomb Defense Up, an extremely straightforward ability and was very useful in everything, but never was overbearing or front and center. Despite never receiving any balance changes, that isn't the end of the ability, and I'm pretty sure you know what is coming next. In version 4.3.0 on December 5th, 2018, Bomb Defense Up got merged with Cold Blooded, turning it into Bomb Defense Up DX. This gives the ability the effects of Bomb Defense Up and Cold Blooded at the same time. This was only a benefit for Bomb Defense Up, as everyone was already wearing a little bit and no one was wearing Cold Blooded. On top of that, the ability is now resilient against point sensors, the tracking effect of Ink Mine, Haunt, and Thermal Ink. It wasn't a big enough change for people to start stacking the ability more, as the tracking effects were still weak in Splatoon 2, and now that everyone can reduce its effects by a little bit, it did not help them. Though in version 4.5.0 on March 11th, 2019, Bomb Defense Up DX got a change. The effect that reduces the tracking from point sensors can now be triggered with fewer abilities. I don't know why they made this change. Point sensor was already not good, and now they made it even worse since it stacks better in low amounts, which is what everyone runs anyways. If they wanted to make people run the ability in higher amounts, they should have made it worse in low amounts. This just makes an already bad sub-weapon even worse. Well, that was the history of Bomb Defense Up DX. There's not that much that it adds that was really impactful, on the Bomb Defense Up side or the Cold Blooded side. It probably has the shortest lifespan of any Splatoon ability, and only got 1 pointless balance change. All of the reasons to use Bomb Defense Up are here, plus more. But I know why you are really here. let's talk about the final ability exclusive to Splatoon 2. In version 4.3.0 on December 5th, 2018, Main Power-Up was introduced, a new stackable ability. Main Power-Up enhances the effectiveness of your main weapon. Since it's a stackable ability, it's favored by Anaki and Tony Kensa, and being unfavored by Inkline. The description is very vague. That is because the ability does different things for each weapon. Alright, let's get this over with. I'll be going over all of the effects. To make this easier on myself and everyone, I'll be categorizing all the effects, as many of them overlap despite being on different weapons or classes. Let's get started. Main Power-Up increases damage for Splooshomatic, Splashomatic, Splattershot Pro, .96 Gal, L3 Nozzle Nose, H3 Nozzle Nose, Squeezer, Carbon Roller, Splat Roller, Dynamo Roller, Flingzer Roller, Splat Charger, Splatter Scope, Bamboozler 14, Gootuber, Hydra Splatling, Ballpoint Splatling, Dapple Doolies, Splat Doolies, Dually Squelchers, Tetra Doolies, and Gluga Doolies. Main Power-Up increases ink coverage for Splattershot Jr., Aerospray, Enzap, Tri-Slosher, Sloshing Machine, Bloblobber, and X-Splosher. Main Power-Up increases shot accuracy while jumping for Splattershot, .52 Gal, Blaster, Range Blaster, Rapid Blaster Pro, and Clash Blaster. Main Power-Up slightly increases range for Jet Squelcher, Squiffer, E-Liter 4K, and E-Liter 4K Scope. Main Power-Up increases duration of firing in a burst for Mini Splatling, Heavy Splatling, and Nautilus. Main Power-Up slightly increases movement speed while inking for Inkbrush and Octobrush. Main Power-Up increases the speed of Brella Canopy Regeneration for Splatbrella and Undercover Brella. Those are all the effects that are shared between weapons, but there are a few more unique ones. Main Power-Up for Luna Blaster increases the radius of high damage explosions. For Slosher, it increases the maximum damage range, and for Tentabrella, it increases the canopy's durability. Alright, well that was a ton, and I'm not going to go over every single one in depth. Instead, I sorted them into 3 categories: not useful at all, useful in certain amounts, and useful in high amounts. The categories are pretty self-explanatory and can be used as a rough estimate on the viability for these weapons. First thing I want to mention is the damage cap introduced in Splatoon 1 is here again, and affects these weapons. So, no matter how much you run, you'll never be able to reduce the number of hits to kill. Despite that, this was really oppressive on Splattershot Pro, Bamboozler, and Ballpoint Splatling, as it made their time to kill a lot faster and made it a nightmare for shorter range weapons to fight them. Weapons like Splattershot, .52 Gal, and Gluga Doolies like Main Power-Up, but didn't need to stack a ton of it. The shooters liked having more accuracy in the air to help them fight better, while Gluga Doolies liked having more consistent damage at a distance. Though the worst Main Power-Up effect by far was on X-Splosher. While it shares the description with other weapons, it's a lie. Instead of making the paint better for the entire shot, it only makes the trail thicker, and not the giant explosion. This is waste of valuable ability slots, since X-Splosher is very ability dependent. I'm sure many people equip this to make the insane paint of the weapon better, only to be disappointed that it does quite literally nothing. This put the Splatoon player base into a frenzy. A new ability that has broken effects on lots of weapons, making weapons that had little to no usage now the top of the meta. Not only players were trying to figure out what weapons would be broken first, but also trying to unlock Main Power-Up gear, as it was limited to once a day for checking the shops, and players did not have enough ability chunks to make gear. It was a very chaotic time, but players didn't have to wait long for changes. In version 4.3.1 on December 19th, 2018, there were many changes to Main Power-Up, mostly relating to undertuning the broken elements and buffing the weaker ones. Weapons that benefited an increase of main power when stacked to the maximum are Splooshomatic, Squeezer, Inkbrush, Octobrush, E-Liter 4K, E-Liter 4K Scope, Tri-Slosher, Mini Splatling, and Undercover Brella. Weapons that got more use out of main power in small amounts are Aerospray, Inkbrush, Octobrush, Tri-Slosher, Mini Splatling, and Undercover Brella. Though Hydra Splatling, Ballpoint Splatling, and Splat Doolies now require more sub-abilities in order to reach 33.3 damage. 2 for the Splatlings, and 4 subs for the Doolies. This was nice, as it tuned out the effects of main power-up and made it more worth it on certain weapons, and toned back the effectiveness on more popular weapons. This didn't really change too much, as the ability was still new, and players were still testing stuff out on it. In version 4.4.0 on January 30th, 2019, main power-up got changes on 5 weapons. On Jet Squelcher, it now adds the additional effect of reducing the amount of spread your weapon has when grounded. On Squiffer, E-Liter 4K, and E-Liter 4K Scope, it now includes the effects of more paint when firing a shot. And for the Undercover Umbrella, it now stacks more easily in lower quantities. The Jet Squelcher changes weren't too noticeable, and it was a nice addition to Undercover Umbrella since it loses its shield so much. But for the Chargers, this made their usage spike. As for E-Liter 4K, not only main power increased the range, but also the paint on the entire shot plus the additional range, which now makes it paint a ton. And with Squiffer, it also made it paint a ton close up, which helped with its special output. We still aren't done with changes. In version 4.5.0 on March 11th, 2019, main power-up got changes on 3 weapons. For Rapid Blaster and Rapid Blaster Pro, main power-up now has the additional effect of making your shot size bigger, and for H3 Nozzle Nose, it now requires one more sub to reach 49.9 damage on a single bullet. For the Rapids, this was good because a while back both of their radii got nerfed. Now if you want to go back to the old size, you have to sacrifice some of your gear, which I think is fair. Though, for H3 Nozzle Nose, this is the start of a trend we'll be seeing moving forward, where it will cost more gear in order to hit your damage cap. But instead of disincentivizing players, it just makes them suck it up and get rid of one more ability on their gear. In version 4.6.0 on April 3rd, 2019, main power-up got changed for 4 different weapons. For N-Zap, it now gets triggered more easily in fewer instances of the ability. For Inkbrush and Octobrush, it now increases the width of your ink trail while rolling, in addition to the previous effects. And for Splattershot Pro, it now takes 2 more subs to reach your maximum damage. The N-Zap and Splattershot Pro changes didn't change the usage of each too much. People weren't using main power-up on N-Zap, and people were still using Splattershot Pro. But for the brushes, people also still didn't use it as stacking wasn't amazing. You could maybe make the case for Octobrush, since it was marginally better, but you'd usually rather not use it. In version 4.7.0 on April 24th, 2019, main power-up got changed for 4 different weapons. For Splattershot, .52 Gal, and N-Zap, it now lessens the shot spread while grounded. And for Luna Blaster, shots that explode mid-air now paint the ground better. The Luna changes did nothing for the weapon, but the shooter change followed the pattern of giving shooters near the end of Splatoon 2 unnecessary buffs. Splattershot and 52 already run a little bit of main power, so gaining the extra effect for free was nice. In version 5.0.0 on July 31st, 2019, main power-up got changed for 1 weapon. It now requires 1 more sub of main power-up to reach maximum damage on Splattershot Pro. Kensel's Splattershot Pro was the king of the meta at the time. While this made it even more reliant on abilities, it didn't really change anything. If you're able to do 49.9 damage, people will do whatever it takes to make it happen. And this was the main criticism of main power-up throughout all of Splatoon 2. Main power-up enabled weapons to do things they weren't balanced to do, and the patches were not toning them back in the right ways. In version 5.1.0 on January 6th, 2020, main power-up got changed for 2 weapons. It now requires 2 more subs to reach maximum damage on L3 Nozzle Nose, and 1 more sub on Bamboozler. The L3 nerf wasn't too bad, as it only needed a surprisingly few subs to hit its maximum damage, and had tons of room for gear space. This now restricts it more, and with Kensel's Splattershot Pro falling out of the meta, Bamboozler took its spot, one-shotting people with 99.9 damage. Since any amount of time spent in ink, you take damage. You can spend 1 frame in enemy ink, and that would be enough to kill you. Okay, that was an insanely long history, and despite Splatoon 2 getting a few more balance patches for another year, main power-up and weapons equipped with it were not changed. You can see a trend with this ability's balance history. The first few patches were tuning out the inconsistencies of the ability, while also adding new effects on weapons that didn't run it to entice players to use more of it. And how they dealt with nerfing it was increasing the amount of main power-up required for weapons to hit maximum damage. But I don't think this was the right way of balancing things. Like I've said before, if the option is there, People will do whatever it takes to attain the brokenness unlocked by the ability. If a weapon is weak in other areas, they wouldn't buff those other areas, since a solid main weapon that can kill you with extra damage would be terrifying. This was seen in the transition of Splatoon 3, as many weapons that heavily benefited from main power-up were seen as weaker with their X factor being gone, and they got buffs accordingly. Main power-up really did change Splatoon 2 for the worse. It was very hard to balance weapons like this, and an ability that changes a core feature, like its damage, can make certain playstyles feel unviable. Do you like Splattershot Pro? Well, you have to commit your entire gear build, or most of it, to main power-up to be optimal, because its time to kill is a lot worse, and because of that, you wouldn't be able to spec into other attributes, like mobility or special output. Do you like playing Bamboozler 14 Mark III? Well, you need to sacrifice some part of your kit. Bamboozler needs main power-up to get the ridiculous mid to long-ranged one-shot, but you might need Inksaver Sub for double Fizzy Bombs, and there are very few Fizzy Bomb weapons. But the Bubble Blower would also like some special power-up, or maybe even some Object Shredder. Main power-up having weapons do crazy things really restricts you in the gear builder. While it seems like main power-up is an option, weapons that rely on it give you less gear freedom, unless you want to have a massive disadvantage. Even weapons like Splash-O-Matic or L3 Nozzlenose that don't need too much still end up having less freedom because of the necessity of main power-up. But this also made balancing worse, as weapons like Bamboozler were broken with main power-up and awful without it. So how do you buff the weapon's main weaknesses? You just can't. Because the one thing that prevented the game from being torn wide open is that these weapons almost had no gear. If Bamboozler was able to one-shot while also having last-ditch effort, or run speed, or object shredder, it would have been even more of a mess than the final state of the game was left in. Of course, main power-up had harsher restrictions on weapons compared to Splatoon 1's damage up, but even if those restrictions were back in that game, I can't imagine people would be too fond of it. And I think of how Splatoon 3's balance team chose to not bring back any abilities that change your damage was a good choice. I think a good compromise is making the damage caps harsher. For example, Bamboozler did 85 damage at base and 99.9 with maximum main power-up. They should make it do a maximum of 95, where you still need to commit a lot of gear in order to get a lot of damage, but you have much more room to choose gear to cover other weaknesses. However, that day in Splatoon 2 never came, and the final state of Splatoon 2 was not looked upon fondly. But before we go, there are a few extra things to go over. When Cold-Blooded and Bomb Defense Up merged into Bomb Defense Up DX, all of your drink tickets and ability chunks combined. All the gear in the shop that was previously Bomb Defense Up became Bomb Defense Up DX, and all the gear that was previously Cold-Blooded became main power-up. While all of the gear not found in the shops that had Cold-Blooded or Bomb Defense became Bomb Defense Up DX, that being the amiibo gear and promotional gear. Well, that was the longest video in the series so far, and I don't think it will be beaten out by any future ones. I really do love Splatoon 2, and saying main power-up ruined it was a bit of hyperbole, and was more to illustrate a point. If you've made it this far, I want you to comment something like, wow, I didn't know Bomb Defense Up protected you from the Rainmaker shield, or I didn't know main power-up made Aerospray shoot faster, just to confuse people who didn't make it this far. We've been doing this on a few of these past couple videos, and I think it's pretty funny, and a lot of you are really creative. I want to say thank you all for watching. I hope you really enjoyed it, as I really enjoyed making it. If you like what you saw, consider becoming a channel member, as you get cool perks like previews on upcoming videos, emotes and badges for when I go live, and direct video suggestions. This has been a really eventful year, not only for the channel, but me personally, and I want to thank you for making a great 2024. I will have a video going up next week talking about this year and what's coming next. I want to say thank you all for watching again, happy holidays, and have a great rest of your day. Bye.